Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Environment Sustainability Committee meeting number 10 of 2022 on the 10th of November. I note that all committee members are in attendance. As it is currently 12:30, I'll move that we adjourn for 20 minutes, unless any member of the committee wishes to suggest otherwise. Okay, because that's procedural, I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried. We will come back. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Environment Sustainability Committee meeting. Commence with acknowledgement of country. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land upon which we meet. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, as the keepers of the traditions, cultures and stories of a proud people. Move to declarations of interest in matters on the agenda. Does any member of committee have any declarations? No. I'd like to acknowledge in the room Councillor Jonick as an observer. Thank you for coming in, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair.
Business outstanding. Item 1 is sandbag availability and community consultation. Matter referred from Council Ordinary meeting of 27 October 2022. The report outlines the recommendations resolved at the Council Ordinary meeting of 27 October, which was subsequently referred back to the Environment Sustainability Committee for consideration and implementation. There is 5 parts to recommendation. I'd like to call forward the Manager of Emergency Management, if that's okay.
Good morning or afternoon, councillors. Matt Pinder, Emergency Management Sustainability Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Pinder. With there being 5 items, if I may ask you to run through each item individually and just address what the current situation is with respect.
Yep, absolutely. So look, the current situation in regards to sandbags is Council has resolved a policy, it was approximately 2 years ago, to provide sandbags only when there is a forecast or probable inundation to properties in the Ipswich local government area. Sometimes that can be quite confusing in terms of, say, messaging, particularly on the East Coast where you've got Brisbane and, say, Redlands. They may have a direct threat where Ipswich may not. So that's some of the challenges around that space. Ordinarily, outside of those times, Council doesn't make sandbags available to residents, and in a similar way that Fire and Emergency Services gets people to prepare and supply firefighting water, first aid kits, that type of thing. The expectation or the approach traditionally taken from that policy is it's the same with sandbags. Residents need to make arrangements to have those in place.
So with respect to item A, where it's stating make available earlier, how would that be defined per se?
It's a question for myself. Yep. So look, noting that it's a procedural motion to refer it back from Council, a formal organisational response hasn't been prepared in relation to this. However, I suppose the key piece is understanding what the desire is around early and what is the definition around that. So some of the challenges are coming up with a consistent definition that can be documented procedurally. So for example, if we wanted to define a trigger that when there's a flood watch issued, that we would issue sandbags, we would have issued sandbags twice in the last couple of weeks, whereas if you had taken the line, it's about the forecast rainfall, then there'll be situations where the intensity rainfall might lead to us wanting to issue sandbags because there could be inundation, but the same quantity of rainfall that isn't as intense may not lead to the need. So I suppose the key is from a service standard is what Council would like to do in terms of defining what is early and what is the service standard for the community.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have any questions with regards to item A? No? Item B, Mr. Pinder, further sandbag collection locations across the LGA.
So this one looks at some of the challenges around this is that council provides filled sandbags as per the policy. Some local government areas, including some of the major local governments, provide piles of sand and also just the bags, and residents are expected to bring shovels and fill those. That is the case in a number of our adjoining LGAs. Brisbane, obviously, as outlined in the media, provides filled sandbags. When we provide filled sandbags, it's about the provision of safe work environment for staff. So traditionally we have done, in years gone by, we've done on-site sandbagging. So we ended up in the case where we would see workers' compensation claims as a result of staff working fields in the rain for days on end filling. So a decision was made to do that at Brigsby Road Depot because it had become available as a large hard stand area to be able to do that. From there, the distribution points started to be established in terms of Rosewood and most recently at Goodna. One of the challenges with the Goodna SCS depot at Redbank Plains is that they've expressed a desire to move that location to somewhere else for council, as in the sandbagging, largely because it impedes, they've requested, stating that it impedes access and egress to their supply and their headquarters in times of floods. So we would need to seek an alternate location in Goodna with a large hard stand area that has access and egress for traffic that's available at short notice.
Yeah. Any other member of the committee have any questions with regards to item B? No. Item C, to prepare video communications on sandbags, including their effectiveness, limitations and proper use, to be shared across all council common platforms.
Obviously, council can determine to produce a video, and it's obviously the resolution of council. We can definitely go ahead and prepare a video. That obviously comes at cost and time to council. The other option is to consider use of the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services video, which could achieve similar or same outcome, but it also just depends, I suppose, on what council would like to see in that video.
Any member of the committee wish to ask anything further on that? Mayor Harding?
I'll just ask, does council already have that on videos on council websites at the moment for sandbagging?
That has now been uploaded and linked in there, available for residents.
CEO?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, through you, this, as you're aware, this notice of motion was raised at the last ordinary council meeting and was referred, as obvious, to this committee. My recommendation would be that these matters would potentially be best workshopped with all councillors to, really fully look into these really important matters for the community, and we can produce for you the evidence of what council has already done in this space. We do have a briefing separate to this on your agendas to take you through roles and responsibilities and emergency management matters. So whether we tackle some of it at that briefing or organise a separate workshop, I think these matters would benefit from further discussion before any resolutions are made at this committee here today with respect. That's just a suggestion for you, Chair.
Thank you, CEO. You've actually...
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So just quickly, there's only 2 items left there, so if we can just pop through those quickly. Mr Pinner, if you could just give us detail as to, with respect to item D, what sandbag disaster preparation fact sheets we already do have.
So there's no fact sheet per se in terms of a PDF. The website was updated and contains that information. It is not difficult to create a PDF fact sheet. There is not, or related to sandbags, but not about sandbags per se. Council has a managing overland flow fact sheet on the website, which looks at flow paths of properties as well. So we'll make sure that's linked into the new sandbag page.
And finally, Item E, consider alternative flood preventative and mitigation options.
Yeah, so at a property owner level is the way I've interpreted that, and there are a number of options available to residents or as individuals. Some of those include absorbent sacks or the like. Some very quick Googling would say that they're about $350 for 20 sacks. The good thing about these sacks is that they can be stored and dragged out. They're actually quite light, so good for people for manual lifting, etc., and then put back in the cupboard and used later on. So they're available from most landscaping and hardware places. And then obviously you've got your more permanent measures such as drainage improvements, spoon drains, etc.
Does any member of committee have anything further they'd like to ask of Mr. Pinder? No? Thank you for running us through all those individual items.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
Committee, so that we can deal with this item, I'll call for a mover.
Yeah, Councillor Milligan. Thank you.
You're moving.
And thanks.
You'd like to move, would you, Councillor?
And thank you, Mr. Pinder, for the operational insights. I think it was worthwhile, the committee hearing those today. But just thinking about the advice from the CEO with regards to a potential future workshop. So, and I believe that this was vaguely discussed at the meeting where we resolved to actually send this to committee to workshop. Rather than actually thrashing it out here, we probably need more information to inform a report that will then come back to us to workshop. And I think that that may have been the original intent, that there is some work that's done to this, but the way that we decided to deal with it meant that it arose in business today, which is fine. So I think that it would be prudent for us to move.
So you'd like to move a
alternative, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
But ensuring that we do encompass the entire notice of motion that was put to us,
yes.
That council at a future briefing or workshop.
So,
I'll second that, Chair.
thank you, Councillor Metz. I'll just wait till that's up.
Or probably workshop rather than briefing or workshop. That council at a future workshop.
Future workshop, yeah, I think you're right there.
That the notice of motion, in its entirety, that the notice of motion, sorry, that starting from the beginning, if you move that the notice of motion.
So it's now a recommendation of this,
So yeah, that the notice of motion be the subject of a future council workshop. I think that's short, sharp and direct enough.
Is that Chair? Is that and through the chair to yourself, Councillor Fechner? Is that clear enough to ensure that the associated information is prepared ahead of that workshop so we can have that discussion? I'm not one to be overly prescriptive.
That level of specificity is okay, and I think that we've had enough discussions.
Yep, I think so. We'll certainly ensure that.
Yeah.
Yep, the entire notice of motion. Yep.
Yep.
Perhaps we could add as soon as practical.
Yep. Happy.
Yep.
We do have a briefing coming up on disaster management on the 16th of November.
Yeah.
We do.
But if the organisation needs a little bit more time, then we can shift it around.
We can schedule another one as soon as practical.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
very good. Councillor Kunzman.
Thank you, Chair. Regardless of what we choose to do today with this motion, this subject reminds us that we need to think about resilience and we need to think about preparedness and not to expect some miracle solution as soon as the rain comes. So I would think that this is a warning to us all to have disaster preparedness and flood preparedness at the front of our minds, and to make our own preparations as well, and to make our own plans as is advised by our website and other websites as well.
As sitting in as observer, Councillor Drunksing, you were the initial mover of the notice of motion. Would you like to offer anything to the discussion?
Thank you, Chair. So happy on what you've deciding to go to a workshop for us to discuss further, and in relation to like flood and weather preparedness, I guess this in a way is supporting our community to be better aware, and just to clarify some confusing information that's out there. Just making it a little simpler, and then noting that some other alternatives for residents are $300 is a lot of money, and there's been a precedent set for assistance from council in certain circumstances. So just, I guess, putting that overlay over concerns for residents and financial viability of households, etc. Thank you.
I think it was good just simply going through the motions of each of the items there, so that it is those items that are of concern, as you'd raised, were detailed by the appropriate officer in this forum, so that is also they're available, so the community know that we are discussing this and how we're moving forward on this. Any further comments?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate Councillor Johnnick's points there about the cost to some potential households. And, you know, I know for many of us, certainly all of us around the table, that's something that we could accommodate into our household budgets. But just conscious of the current cost of living crisis that Australians are facing, and the inflationary pressures that haven't really been experienced in my life before. So just always being cognizant of those access and inclusion things about people and their different environments at home in regards to surplus cash and those sorts of things.
Councillor Kunzman.
Just for clarification, my comments were not to demand that everybody go out there and buy their own sandbags, but it is about a consciousness of disaster preparedness and having it front of mind as people. And when the sun's shining, this is a difficult subject for people to put their heads around. But that is the message, is personal preparedness.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Harding.
Do we have to wait till it's seconded before we discuss it?
It was moved and seconded.
And the alternative motion is?
Pardon?
And the alternative motion's?
Yes, it was moved by Councillor Fechner and seconded by Councillor Madsen.
Thank you very much. I guess my comments on this, I note that for recommendation A, and I'm looking forward to the workshop, whether it's the 16th or another time. And I'd be keen to know when we have that workshop, we I think be delivering our flood review. We're listening to on our first time our council's actually done a flood review post a flood. I think that's coming to us early December to council. So I'll be very keen to hear back from residents on their views on sandbags. I think that'll be an important part. And I do note that with C, D and E that all that information that was requested is currently on a council website as well. But I think we also need to look at communications and education, how we get the messages out.
Anything further?
So I don't think
Mayor?
sandbags, since I know in this term we've not ever charged anyone for sandbags. Certainly I think in that flood event we handed over 28,000 sandbags at no charge to ratepayers.
Last call. Anything further? No, then I'll put the motion as it is. The motion is that... No, I've lost it. There it is, that the notice of motion be the subject of a future council workshop as soon as practical. Those in favour? It's unanimous. and carried. Thank you. Item 2 is confirmation of minutes of the meeting of the Environment Sustainability Committee meeting number 9 on the 13th of October 2022. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fackner. Seconder? Mayor Harding, thank you. Is there any discussion on that? No amendments? Good, eh? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Unanimous and carried. Thank you. Item 3 in the officers' reports is the Little Liverpool Range Initiative update. This is a report concerning Ipswich City Council's ongoing support of the Little Liverpool Range Initiative for a further 5-year period. Current funding partners, Ipswich City Council, Turner Family Foundation and the Queensland Trust for Nature have made adjustments to the current strategic plan previously endorsed by Council and have developed a new terms of reference document to capture the new aspirations of the initiative. Does any member of the committee wish to ask any questions of an officer? No? Then I'll call for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. Second? Do I have a seconder? The recommendation. Yeah, I'm sorry. All three. Thank you, Councillor Fackner. I'll open the matter for discussion.
Through you, Chair, I think that this initiative, since it came in 2016, has been successful in delivering good environmental outcomes for the Little Liverpool Range. It's certainly a project that we've heard from many council officers that they've certainly believed in and they've seen the benefits of. So to continue to invest in this and to continue to invest in the environment is 2 thumbs up for me. So I wholeheartedly support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fackner. Any further discussion? No? Then I'll put the motion. Oh, beg my pardon. Quicken the deed.
Thank you. I echo Councillor Fackner's comments with broad support for the concept of citizen science.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. Anything further? No? Then I will put the motion. Those in favour? Unanimous and carried. Thank you. Item 4 is Ipswich Rivers Improvement Trust 2022 to 2023 precept. This is a report concerning the payment of the annual precept issued by the Ipswich Rivers Improvement Trust to Ipswich City Council under the River Improvement Trust Act 1940 of Queensland and the associated annual works program for the 2022 to 2023 financial year. Does any member of the committee wish to ask any questions? Thank you, Mayor Harding. We call Mr. Smith. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, Councillors. Philip Smith, Natural Environment and Land Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mayor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Smith, do you mind explaining what a precept is and what the responsibilities council have under the River Improvement Trust Act?
I'm certainly no expert in precepts, and there's not many of them that are knocking around. But my understanding, to the best of my knowledge, is that the Act essentially gives the powers to the entity to bill or issue a bill to council for the works and to support the programme. As council, we don't have much say in that directly under the Act, although we do work closely with the development of that programme. So I can get you a more accurate and in-depth answer on notice, Mayor, but from an operational perspective, that's how it's dealt with.
Is there any limit? Could they ask us for $10 million and we're legally obliged, or what's the...
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
I'll ask you, Mr. Smith.
No, understandably, we have 2 members of the trust in the on the committee today, so my understanding is that there isn't. There's not written into it, and yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Happy to ask.
Chair, if I can afford the appropriate clarification. So the precept, while technically not having a upper limit, it's typically has to be reasonably justified by the works to take place. So that's a catch-all that covers off. So the trust can't ask for $10 million for $1 million worth of work. If they're only going to do a certain amount of work, that's all that they can lodge the precept for.
And I guess what I was going to
Sorry.
lead on to,
Yeah,
I was still asking questions.
sure. Yeah, it's just I had another hand in the air, sorry. So-
Okay. Just leading on to that, I was going to lead on to the fact that who do we have, what councils are on our Rivers Improvement Trust and how that works is what I was going to ask. Yes, but I just thought for the sake of residents who are, so they would be aware.
Is that to me, Mayor, or is that to the members of the trust?
Yes, so what we have councillors on
Yep.
the trust? Yes.
So presently there's two acting councillors in Councillor Madsen and Councillor Fechner, who are members of the trust, and there's 3 other standing members, I believe, and a secretary as well.
Thank you, Mr Smith.
Councillor Kunzman.
The equivalent would be the Rabbit Board, which has a precept. The amount is limited by the fact that the Rabbit Board's budget and forward projections are shared with council before they're agreed with us as the directors. So that's where the limit comes in. There's no $10 million.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's applicable in this same precept.
Councillor Madsen.
Apologies, everyone. I was at the Rivers Improvement Trust State Conference last week, and one important thing that was raised at that AGM was that there's specific concessions with the Rivers Improvement Trust as a statutory authority that Councillor Fechner and I are not regarded as directors. It's a different arrangement. I'm unsure of the Rabbit Board, but just felt important to clarify that because it changes materially the requirements of the authority. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of Mr Smith? Thank you, sir. Committee, the recommendation is that the report regarding the Ipswich Rivers Improvement Trust 2022 to 2023 precept be received and the contents noted. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. I'll open the matter for discussion. Councillor Fechner.
And through you, Chair, and I might need Councillor Madsen's help with this, but you will have noticed that the precept has doubled from $150,000 to $300,000 a year, and you can see the works program that's undertaken. We do have a project officer within the trust who's extremely motivated to achieve some really good results for the trust. So, you know, we do put a lot of faith in that particular project officer. And I guess we don't issue the precept lightly. It's something that we do discuss in detail. This council historically has been really quite, I guess, amenable to making difficult financial decisions when it comes to helping the environment. And I guess in a way, in some local governments, the trusts could be the keeper of what is a pretty what might be the maximum amount of environmental spend that a local government might do. The precept might actually save a council from itself in some regards, although that's not the case here. You know, a council may make, you know, financial decisions, may make a budget decision not to invest anything. You know, in waterway repair, in any projects like that. So the issuing of a precept would mean that that financial investment is occurring. So I think that that's kind of an interesting concept to think about the trust. But when, and this is where I want to hear a little bit from you, Councillor Madsen, through your chair, is, you know, bringing greater value to the trusts. The trusts, as I understand, used to get lots of grants that councils weren't eligible for necessarily. That's changed over the years, and there's quite a lot of overlap when it comes to the funds that the trust and a local government are eligible to apply for. The real benefit now is, and Councillor Madsen can talk to this at state conference, they were talking about instigating monies that come to the trust directly from the state government to actually bolster the amount that local governments put in. And I think that that's a really good value proposition for the trust and a good reason to keep it alive, because the more money that we can get to spend on these projects, the better off we're going to be. Councillor Madsen, are you able to speak to that?
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Fechner. Yeah, principally there's been a bit of a frustrating process for the trusts because the last shuffling of departments at the state level, the trust had to report to one department but was funded through another. And slowly it's worked its way through a review. And certainly the outcome of the review appears to be a renewed focus from the state in supporting and activating trusts through a level of state funding. There was a great deal of positivity at the conference last week that will occur. Of note for others probably is that there's a councillor from the Gundawindi Council that had attended because they were seeking whether to establish a trust because there's some works that they can't undertake in their riverine system where they're not allowed to actually access it. So they're looking if the establishing a trust is the right mechanism for them. I received some word that Mackay, who had wound up their trust previously, were looking at reinstigating it. It's really a rapidly evolving space, and there was one sort of agreed norm across the state. There's a number of trusts all across Queensland, and one of the agreed norms was that trusts themselves will definitely need to promote their activities a lot more. They'd often have community members who are just keen to get the work done and not looking for a pat on the back, and not saying that certain people do that with reporting, but that's the real reason why everyone at the AGM last week sort of suggested why they hadn't done it previously, because every dollar they spend on promoting themselves is a dollar that they can't spend on works in waterways. The skill sets that were there last week, there was a new term that I'm aware of called fluvial geomorphology. There aren't many people who are fluvial geomorphologists in the state, but there was one gentleman called Mr. Tate that works with a number of the trusts in northern Queensland. There's also a number of people with technical engineering expertise, and typically they make themselves available to these trusts, and they're paid cents on the dollar in terms of meeting fees for what their actual expertise is worth professionally. So I believe that's worth highlighting. These aren't money pits trusts. They actually run a very tight ship and produce good outcomes. In that regard, I'm happy to answer any more questions about them. It's been an evolving space of myself. But principally with other councils looking to establish trusts again and do those sorts of works, I think it's worth highlighting that it does perform an important mechanism, and if council can embrace with that as it has previously, I think it'll continue to be worthwhile.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Any further discussion? Mayor Harding.
Thank you. So I'll be obviously supporting this vote. I have no issues with that, and I ask the questions because I think it's important for people to know and residents to know how these things are funded and how that mechanism operates. I'd also like to thank the Rivers Improvement Trust because they have been proactive in what they want to do and also coming to us with the budget. It wasn't a last minute thing, so I just appreciate that they are working collaboratively with council.
Any further discussion? No? Then
Chair, I'd just follow on from that. If anybody ever has questions more about the trusts, that was just a really clear thing from last week, is that they're keen for people to understand the work that they're doing. There's no desire to not have the public aware of their works and aware of the value that's created by their acts.
Absolutely. Last call. Anything further? No? Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Item 5, Healthy Land and Water Network Membership Agreement 2023 to 2025. This is a report concerning the renewal of the 3-year network membership agreement between Ipswich City Council and Healthy Land and Water, and the proposal to enter into a 1-year membership only until a further internal review is undertaken. Does any member of committee wish to ask any questions? No. Then the recommendation is in 3 parts as per the agenda. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Mayor Harding. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. I'll open the matter for discussion.
I guess I'm supportive of this recommendation to only continue for 12 months while we do some work in the background to understand and fully realise the value that we get out of our membership with Healthy Land and Water. I mean, I commend council officers for taking that step back to make those considerations. This space has changed so much in the past 3 years. There's an incredible amount of money floating around between the city deal, the project managers, the PMO at ComSec, Resilient Rivers, the money that that the federal government have ensured that the electorate of Blair gets through Shane Newman's commitment. I mean, there's a lot going on in this space, and it's a lot of work for our officers to undertake and to understand, to actually map out what are the true benefits to us. So it feels like if we take the right opportunities at the right time, it could be a golden era for the environment. So I implore them just taking 12 months to fully understand what this arrangement is before committing to a multi-year deal.
Absolutely well said, Councillor. Anything further? No, then I will put the motion. Those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. Item 6 is repeal of the Conservation Estates and Reserves Management Policy. This is a report concerning the repeal of the Conservation Estates and Reserves Management Policy and, in its place, the formation of the new Conservation Estates and Reserves Statement of Management Intent, the procedure. Does any member of the committee wish to ask any questions? No. The recommendation is that the current policy titled Conservation Estates and Reserves Management Policy, as outlined in Attachment 1, be repealed. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. Open the matter for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. Item 7 is adoption of urban greening policy. This is a report concerning the development of the urban greening policy. The intention is to repeal the urban forest policy and adopt the urban greening policy. The policy has been developed to align with the urban greening plan. The policy outlines Council's acknowledgement of the key role that urban greening plays in the city's resilience and livability, which protects vegetation and wildlife. Also, that urban greening contributes to the community health and well-being and is important for the protection and enhancement of urban habitat and connectivity to urban corridors. Does any member of committee wish to ask any questions? No? The recommendation is in 2 parts as per the agenda. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. I open the matter for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. I have no notices of motion, no matters arising. We close the meeting at 1:30. The next committee will commence in 10 minutes.